Welcome everybody to part 3 of Introduction to the Bradley Barometer. So we started out looking in the last video at the early 1900s at the Bradley Barometer. This was a period when the Fed wasn't involved and the market really was kind of in an innocent phase. Okay, probably similar to what Bitcoin is now, because we know Bitcoin responds very well to these systems too. These cyclical systems and astro indicators and the quad lunar cycle. So this was really an early time in the markets. So I showed you a few years. But what about when there is a severe market sell-off? What happens with the Bradley? Can the Bradley predict these times? And so the theory is that the Bradley is symbolic of the emotion of the participants in the market, based upon what's going on up in the sky with the transits. And we also know that other things such as geomagnetic storms can affect the mood of the people too. And this is actually well documented. But this is not geomagnetic storms. This is the actual transits up in the sky. So what happens? Does the Bradley accurately predict these market crashes? So the first thing we want to look at is 1929. We want to look at the Great Depression, or the fall of the market when it hit that big high in 1929. And then from the perspective of the Bradley, we're not looking at anything else. We're not looking at Mercury retrograde. We're not looking at any other transits, speed of the planets, just the Bradley. Can it predict what's going on? So you can see here in 1929, this is 1928 down here, and this is 1929. You can see that the market has this big run up. So this is the roaring 20s, right? And you can see that it has this stair-step fashion up, and then there's your top right there, okay? This is back in the Jesse Livermore times, right? And then we have this big fall into here, okay? Recovers a little bit, and then it continues this pattern down, and of course we fall into the Great Depression. Everything just kind of really continues lower from there. So what did the Bradley do? What did the Bradley predict? And remember, this is not rectified or optimized to the market. It's not an over-optimization. This is just the Bradley, how the planets are in the sky. You can see it does predict this rise in the market. You can see here, and it does show these surges here. The market is kind of following this surge here. It has one final push here, and it's going to start its big push lower during this phase. So there's a big drive lower coming here. So even it does turn a little bit before the market, but you can see that big drive lower there is coming. So Bradley comes up here, gets one final little peek into here. The market does go a little bit past the Bradley there, and then it does start to follow the market down here. You can see the Bradley's falling during this phase. Market tried to do a bounce into here, and then you can see here on the next leg down of the Bradley here, it does a very good job of forecasting. Even this little bounce up into here, it does pick this up right here. And then this little dip into here, it does pick this one up into here. And so as we go all the way down here, it does a very good job. So that's a key. I mean, a criticism could be, well, you're just picking these moments when the Bradley worked, and you could pick you could put a random chart up there and it could just predict what the market's doing. Well, not on major market crashes, right? So this is why I'm keying in on the major market crashes, because if it can pick up these major market crashes, then that's definitely not true, right? I mean, you can't make that argument that we're just picking random times when it did well, because this is a major market crash. So this is the Great Depression, right? So that's what this is into here. And again, the market was really in an innocent phase where it wasn't able to be tampered with to that degree, right? I mean, it was smaller, there were less participants, but it's not like we see now where you can press a button on a computer and print $1 trillion. It's not like that. So yes, it did predict during a major market crash. The Bradley was very accurate. And we're going to go through all of these. So I'm not going to skip around no, we're going to go in order through these different crashes. And I'm going to show you this. I'm very thorough with this research. I don't really skip anything. I try to go through everything. And when there's exceptions, I note them. But the exceptions that we can see in modern times are definitely due to the Fed. So that's the Great Depression there. We go a little bit further here. You can see this is a little bit further up here. This is 1937. So again, this is 1937 into here. And you can see that the market's still into this, having these issues into here. You can see 37, it comes up. and then this August peak, and then it falls all the way down. We continue to have these October issues into here. And I just want to point something out too, just going back to this previous chart, that you know, a lot of these issues that occur into here, if this is December, November, October, the market had a really bad reputation of selling off in October. And so everyone was scared of the market in October. And this continued to go all the way up to the 87 crash. You can see it again here. So there was a long time when the market, October was really bad. But now since the Fed started in 2009, that has shifted. So that's shifted around a little bit. It's now more like September, August time that it gets weak. So that's interesting too, that all of this October stuff started way back in the beginning in the early 1900s. But again, you can see here the market is into this free fall phase into here. It's still falling. So it does this top into here, and you can see it does this leg down into here, right into the late phases here of 1937. And then of course you can see here, this is the October fear factor into here, that people create this big fear about October. And so for a long time, this kind of ruled the markets. Again, this went all the way up into 1987. We still had these issues. Now, not so much, right? And so this is why I studied the markets from the point when the Fed got strong versus just trying to go back and say, I'm a student of the market. Like, a lot of people try to do this. They say, I'm a student of the market. I've studied all of this. I went back in history. And if you go back 200 years, it's very strong. Maybe. Some cycles that are really, really big, you can say that, but things do change over time, kind of like when a storm comes across an island. It will change the contours under the ocean. It will create mini islands. It will move sandbars. It will do different things. The Fed has moved a lot of these dates and shifted them around in current times. But again, you can see here, the market does this fall into here and into that October period. And then you can see the Bradley does a very good job, again, of forecasting this movement into here. You can see it does. This one picks the high very close to almost the actual high into here. This one was almost exactly at the high here in August. So current times, we're starting to see more weakness into here. Okay, probably out into September. And previously it was October. Now, this is also the season of geomagnetic storms. Okay, that's a whole nother topic. But this is the season that stuff occurs. So this could also be an influence. These are other influences that we can look at. But in terms of the Bradley was doing a pretty darn good job here of predicting this stuff. You can see here it picks the whole run down into here. It does pick this little loop up into here. And then again, you can see the low is here. The market bottomed a little bit before the Bradley into here. But again, just another amazing forecast here from the Bradley. And again, going back to these times when the market was very emotional, the Bradley was able to do a good job of picking that up. So that's the key here. So we want to make sure that when the markets are emotional, and these are very important times and very like key signature market crashes, that the Bradley is able to forecast this. And so I'm going to show you that there's no exceptions to this. If you go through all the major crashes, the Bradley is there until now. And when we get into weird stuff like the flash crash in 2010 and all the stuff later, you have to look to other things. You have to look for periods when the Fed is weak. You have to look for the speed of the planet slowing down. All these other weird factors come in. But back in the day, right, it was pretty simple. Life was good. Life was easy. And we were able just to kind of follow the Bradley. And this continued, by the way, all the way up until the 2000s. I would say the 2008 low, the Bradley was still in effect here. But I just think that the first granddaddy crash of them all here, the Great Depression, the Bradley was right on top of this and giving insights. And keep in mind that this was before the Bradley, this was before the 40s, right? So it doesn't really matter where you place this barometer, right? It works. And so why? Again, the theory is that it's the mood of the people, and the market is a group of participants of people, and they're influenced by what's going on up in the sky. Now, again, I always tell people that the current problem that we have with the Fed is that, you can take a machine to make it do these cycles, right? To do cycles like this, right? And you can say, well, that's a high, that's a low, that's a high, that's a low. And so what if I was drawing these cycles for you, right? And on a piece of paper, and I just had somebody drawing the cycles, and you were doing the cycles, and then I hit your hand, I knocked your hand up like this, and you continue to do the cycles like this. That's kind of how I look at what the Fed is doing. It's like they have this external hand coming in and jarring the market up. So it's not like these cycles disappear or the Bradley disappears. It's just that there's such a powerful external influence that, the Bradley is really meant to deal with what we would call a closed system. If we talk about this in physics, we talk about a closed system where no energy is entering or leaving. And so when we have this closed system here, in physics, this is when we get conservation of energy. This is when we get, no external forces, conservation of momentum. And so this is what, again, we refer to of the natural forces. And this is really the dominance this is what the Bradley is. It's the natural forces of the market. Now we know that there are unnatural forces of the Fed, right? So again, it's really a game of understanding when those natural forces are strong and when are the unnatural forces strong. And we kind of look at those and we compare them together. All right, guys, so that's it for this video. That's part 2 of the Great Depression in the early 30s. I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope everyone has a great evening. Stay safe out there, and I will talk to you soon. Peace out.